The first time I saw her outside of work was at the cafe near the corner. The kind that smells faintly of burned espresso and rain, damp wood. I came in to write an email I'd probably never send, the one that began with, "I hope this doesn't sound unprofessional." She was already there. Sitting by the window, coat draped over the back of her chair, reading something that wasn't work for once. The sight startled me. Like seeing a teacher at the grocery store, holding milk. She looked softer, less precise. I almost turned around. Instead, I ordered a black coffee and pretended to check my phone. When I passed her table, she looked up. "You always get the same thing," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. I smiled halfway. "You remember that?" She closed her book, setting a finger between the pages. "You drink it too fast. Always looks like you're in a hurry to leave." I didn't know what to do with that. So I just shrugged, like she hadn't said something quietly intimate. She smiled at my awkwardness, a small, knowing one, and went back to her book. I sat 2 tables away, facing the window too. It rained softly, the kind that doesn't change plans but changes moods. I watched the reflection of her face in the glass more than the street itself. She tapped her pen against her notebook once, twice. I realized she wasn't reading anymore. At work, she's the kind of boss who remembers details, birthdays, allergies, who takes sugar. Efficient, poised. But in that cafe, she was different. There was an ease to the way her hair fell loose, how she leaned into her chair instead of sitting upright. I wanted to say something simple, like "You look relaxed today," but it sounded wrong in my head, too close, too seen. Instead, I unfolded my napkin, smoothed it flat on the table, wrote a single line from an old song in the corner. Something I knew she'd like. I didn't mean for her to see it, but she noticed. When I went to throw it away, she stopped me. "Don't waste that. That's poetry." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes weren't. We both laughed quietly, that small, shared relief that happens when neither of you know what's next. Later, she left first. I stayed behind, watching her reflection disappear from the window. My phone buzzed a few minutes after. A text from her. "Boss, you never told me how that song ends." I stared at it for a long time. She'd never texted me before. I typed something. "Maybe I could tell you over coffee again," then erased it. Wrote "It fades out halfway." Deleted that too. The rain slowed outside. I could see her umbrella waiting in the stand by the door, forgotten. When she came back for it, our eyes met through the glass. She opened the door, hair a little wet now, and said, "You really should go home." "I was waiting for the rain to stop," I said. She tilted her glass toward me, the one she'd finished earlier, and said softly, "You never know when I might cross the line." Then she smiled, that small, knowing smile again, and left. The door chimed once, and I realized my coffee was cold. That was the night I started saving her forgotten umbrella, even though she never asked me to. The next Monday she acted like nothing had happened. Meetings, deadlines, polite nods. No mention of rain, or forgotten umbrellas. I told myself I'd imagined it. The way her tone had lowered that night, the glass tilted between us like a dare. But when she handed me a stack of reports, her fingers brushed mine. Just a second too long. It could have been nothing. She was wearing the same perfume. The faint, cedar one that lingered in her office. By Wednesday, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Then she asked if I could help her move some boxes after hours. Hold project files, she said. We stayed late. The office felt different without everyone else. Quieter, but not peaceful. She made tea in the small kitchenette, humming softly as the kettle clicked. When she handed me the mug, she said, "You look tired lately." "Maybe I am." I tried to smile. "Long nights, I guess." She nodded. That's the age for it. The way she said it, gently, almost fond, made me feel younger than I was. Or maybe just seen. We sat on the floor after the last box, both pretending it was a break. Papers and half-empty mugs around us. Her knees drawn up, her sleeves rolled past her elbows. She told me about her son, around my age. "He's studying abroad," she said, eyes on the papers. "I don't hear from him much." I hesitated. "Do you miss him?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Every day." Though I don't think he'd want to hear that. Something in me tightened. I thought of my own mother, who called but never asked how I felt. Only if I'd eaten. I wanted to say, "I get it." But I didn't. I just folded the corner of a file, needing to do something with my hands. She noticed. You do that when you're uncomfortable, she said. What? Fold things, napkins, papers, anything within reach. I looked at the small crease, embarrassed. You notice everything. Not everything, she said quietly, just what I shouldn't. The air between us changed. Neither of us moved. The kettle clicked again in the silence, cooling. I thought of that night in the cafe. Her voice low, teasing, dangerous. You never know when I might cross the line. Now I wondered if she already had. When she stood to leave, she brushed dust off her skirt, then hesitated. Thank you for helping. Any time. She looked at me for a moment, something almost tender behind her restraint. Then she reached out, smoothing the wrinkle I'd made on the file corner. You should let things stay imperfect sometimes. Her touch was brief, but I felt it long after she'd left the room. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few weeks blurred into late nights and quiet mornings. Reports, edits, briefings. The small things that fill time but don't quite disguise it. We didn't talk about the tea or the touch. But something had shifted. The air around her office felt aware. Sometimes she'd call me in just to check on a draft. Other times she'd leave the door open, as if reminding herself there were lines. Invisible, but there. One evening, I stopped by to return a misplaced folder. Her office light was still on. She was leaning against the window, shoes off, scrolling her phone. When she saw me, she set it down, too fast. Long day, I said. They all are. She smiled faintly, rubbing the back of her neck. You didn't have to stay. I wasn't planning to. I didn't mean it like that, but it hung between us, heavier than I intended. She crossed her arms, not coldly, just self-conscious, cheerful. People already think I overwork you. I don't mind. She looked at me then, really looked. The kind of look that makes you forget what you were supposed to say next. A knock interrupted it. Hey boss. Someone from HR poked their head in, cheerful and oblivious. You heading out? We're locking up soon. Her composure returned instantly. In a minute, the door closed. Silence again. But the moment was gone. She busied herself, gathering papers. I could see her pulse at her throat, a small, steady beat. I started. Go home, she finished for me. I nodded but didn't move. My hand brushed the edge of her desk. She noticed. She always did. You shouldn't stay, she said softly. Do you want me to leave? She didn't answer. Just breathed in slowly, eyes flicking to the half-empty glass near her hand. The same kind she'd tilted in that cafe. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. You're young. You'll get used to wanting things that aren't good for you. It stung, not the words, but the truth in them. She reached for the folder, our fingers almost touching. Then she froze halfway. Looked up. The kind of stillness that doesn't need words. I could hear the hum of the office lights, the faint sound of rain starting again outside. She was so close that her perfume, cedar and something faintly citrus, felt like warmth. Her lips parted slightly, not for words but for breath. Then she pulled back. Good night. It was the softest retreat I'd ever seen. Not rejection, more like mercy. I left before I could say something I couldn't take back. Outside, under the drizzle, I saw her reflection in the window as she turned off the light. For a second, it looked like she was reaching toward me. Maybe I imagined it. But for the first time, I wished I hadn't. It was late Thursday. The office had emptied except for the hum of the heater and her tapping at the keyboard. I lingered by the doorway, unsure why I hadn't left yet. She looked up when I cleared my throat. Still here. Just finishing. I didn't finish the sentence. It didn't matter. She tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You know, sometimes I think you're the only one who notices the little things around here. I wanted to say something that would make her stop, make her look at me the way she had in the cafe, in the office after the boxes. But the words died in my throat. Instead, I walked over and leaned against the edge of her desk. The wood was smooth, warm under my fingertips. I notice because it matters. She froze, typing, fingers still. Then she pushed back her chair, standing. It matters to you. Her voice was quieter now but sharper. Yes, I said too quickly. Her eyes softened, but there was caution. I shouldn't let it matter to you. I swallowed. I wanted to tell her everything. That I thought about her in the quiet hours, that her smile lingered on the edge of my thoughts, but instead, I just said, "Why not?" She glanced away, fiddling with a loose strand of hair. "Because we shouldn't cross lines. And if we did." My voice almost broke. Her gaze met mine, steady, and I could see a flash of something raw behind her control. Hurt, maybe, or fear. Then it wouldn't be just about me anymore. I stepped closer. Not too close, not enough to overstep. Just close enough to feel the heat of her presence. She didn't move. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like?" I asked, voice lower, almost a whisper. Her hand stilled on the desk. She didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched. The faint scent of rain on the window behind her, the muted glow of the desk lamp, everything slowed. She started, then stopped. Her fingers twitched a small human gesture. "I shouldn't," she said finally. "Shouldn't what?" I asked, heart thudding. Her eyes flicked to the door, the clock, the papers scattered across the floor. She exhaled slowly, like she was releasing air she hadn't realized she'd been holding. I don't know. I didn't move. Didn't speak, I just waited. The room hummed around us. Her lips parted slightly, not quite forming words, as though she were about to say something irreversible. Then, just as suddenly, she stepped back. Her hands brushed the edge of the desk, and she asked quietly, almost to herself, "Are you sure you want this?" The question hung between us, heavier than any words could carry. I didn't answer. The next week, she was different, not colder, just distant. Her smiles were smaller, her glances fleeting. The late night teas, the shared silences, all gone. I hovered in the doorway a few times, thinking maybe she just had more work. But then I noticed her phone. She answered quickly, voice low, guarded. The way she said someone's name, soft, hesitant, made my stomach knot. I stopped leaving the office first. She always did now. She walked past me, keys in hand, and said, "See you Monday." No lingering. No soft teasing. No glass tilted in the cafe. I tried calling her a couple of times. Unsent texts stayed in drafts. "Do you want to talk? I miss our coffee breaks." Each one deleted before my thumb released send. One evening, I ran into her by the elevator. I tried to make light. "Busy day." She nodded. "Yes, sorry. Lots to handle." I nodded too. There was something she wasn't saying. Something I wasn't supposed to ask. I imagined scenarios. A new man, her son visiting unexpectedly, a reminder of her life outside this quiet tension. I imagined her hand on someone else's arm, her laugh not for me. It twisted inside me, not heartbreak, just pause. I stopped leaving my desk early, pretending to finish tasks that didn't exist. I lingered in the faint smell of coffee she had brewed hours ago. I listened for the click of her heels in the hallway, but sometimes there were only echoes. And then Thursday came. She didn't invite me to help with files. She didn't ask for tea. She didn't notice the stack of folders I'd carefully arranged, the same way she always did. I watched from across the office. She smiled at someone else, a visiting colleague, and the warmth wasn't for me. By Friday, I didn't expect her to come down for the elevator with me. I didn't expect the soft corner of attention that had been ours. I almost sent a text that night. Almost typed, "I miss how we were." But I didn't. I sat in the cafe we used to pass together, black coffee cooling in front of me. The window fogged from the rain outside, the seat across from me empty. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. And maybe she felt the same. It was late Saturday afternoon. I had stopped by her apartment to drop off some papers she'd forgotten at work. The hallways smelled faintly of laundry detergent and citrus. The same faint scent she always carried, subtle but unmistakable. She opened the door halfway, surprised but not startled. "You came. I had these for you," I said, holding up the stack. My voice sounded smaller than I'd meant. She stepped aside, letting me in. "Thanks, I wasn't expecting anyone." The apartment was quiet, familiar. The kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel loud. Her slippers against the floor, the kettle clicking, my hand brushing the edge of the table as I set down the papers. We didn't speak for a moment. I tried to read her expression. Calm, composed. But the slight tremor in her hands betrayed something she wasn't saying. "Do you want some tea?" she asked, finally. "Yes, please." She moved to the kitchenette, making 2 cups. The steam rose between us. I noticed her pause as she poured, careful not to spill. That hesitation, ordinary, mundane, held more than words. We sat at the small table, cups in hand. I wanted to break the silence, but the wrong words felt heavier than none. Finally, I said, "I've been avoiding you this week." She looked at me, still waiting. I didn't know if I should come, or say anything. I wasn't sure what you wanted. Her eyes softened, but she still looked away, focusing on the rim of her cup. I didn't know either, she admitted quietly. I kept thinking I should step back, that it wasn't right. I nodded, though I wanted to reach across the table and hold her hand. Not for a declaration, not for proof. Just to close the distance that had stretched too long. I didn't stop myself, I said. Even when I tried. She let out a slow breath, folding her hands around the cup. I was afraid of losing control. Letting something happen that I couldn't undo. The words were simple, but heavy. We'd been circling the same truth for weeks, each afraid to name it aloud. I leaned back slightly, studying her profile, the soft light from the window catching her hair. And now, she glanced at me. A small, fleeting smile. I think we're here. Finally, even if we don't know what comes next. I didn't move, didn't speak. The tension in her shoulders, the careful exhale, the quiet warmth of tea between us. Then she said softly, almost to herself, "Okay." I smiled, matching her simplicity. Nothing more needed, not yet. The clock ticked, the tea cooled, and for the first time in days the quiet felt enough. It wasn't dramatic, no storm, no grand confession. Life moved forward quietly, like it always does. Weeks passed, we settled into a rhythm that felt natural, almost ordinary. I'd arrive at the office at 7 a.m., just in time to see her sipping black coffee at her desk. Sometimes she'd tilt her mug toward me, a tiny, private acknowledgement of our mornings together. The late-night teas became less deliberate, more casual, a habit we no longer needed to justify. Shared silences felt easy. I noticed the small things again, the way she folded a corner of a page, the crease in a napkin, the faint cedar citrus scent she carried. One Saturday, we ended up at the cafe where it began. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. She left her umbrella beside the table, just as she had months ago. I waited for her, watching the reflection of her face in the fogged glass. She caught my glance and smiled softly. No teasing words, no warnings about crossing lines, just a smile that said, "We're here, together." At work, routines shifted too. We still maintained the boundaries, quietly navigating our worlds, but the tension that once made every glance a question mark had softened. A glance could now be a conversation, a cup of tea a bridge between lives rather than a test of restraint. I'd catch her looking at something. A stack of papers, the street outside, and notice the small way her lips pressed together. Not stress, not worry, recognition, awareness. And in those moments I felt seen, entirely, without needing to say a word. On the bench outside the office one afternoon, we sat quietly sharing a lukewarm coffee. The city moved around us, indifferent. I thought about all the nearly missed moments. The texts unsent, the hands that hovered just a little too long, the almost confessions that never left our lips. She turned to me, eyes catching the late afternoon light. "It's better now," she said, softly. Nodded, 'cause I felt the same. Better, yes. Calmer. Grounded. Whole in a way that didn't need fireworks. And then she reached for her cup, her fingers brushing mine ever so slightly. That touch, brief, casual, and yet deliberate, spoke volumes. No words, just acknowledgement. "I know you. You know me." As we stood to leave, the rain began again, gentle and warm. We walked together, separate but side by side, umbrellas overlapping, the quiet rhythm of shared lives guiding us forward. Back at my desk, I noticed a folded napkin tucked into the corner of my notebook. Hers, from months ago. I unfolded it, smiled, and kept it there. Because only we would understand the small meaning in that crease.